Okay, it's April 13th today. 2026. It's amazing. We've been doing this for a number of years now. And welcome back. Uh, our plan is to have a class this week. I plan to have a class next week. We'll see about the week after. I have a ticket to Israel on the 26th of April. We'll see if that happens. And and here we are. So we are approaching Tazria Metzora. These are the double parshas at the heart of the book of Vayikra. Um, I want to say something. It's not. I'll just be honest. I dread, teaching these parshas because they are so removed from us in terms of our worldview and our life and our practice. Uh, and then I force myself to get over that and to find something that we can connect to, find something that is accessible to us in a context where this is interesting and this may make sense. Basically, what we're talking about in these parshiot are some of the central ritual torot, the ritual organizational laws um, in Vayikra. Just by way of aside, the book of Vayikra has its own decalogue, that is to say, its own 10 commandments, or own set of 10 Torot. The 10 Torot are the Torat Ha'olah, the burnt offering, the Mincha, the Chatat, the Asham, and the Zevach Shlamim. There are five basic categories of sacrificial offerings. And then there's the Torat HaBehemah, the pure or permitted and forbidden animals, Hayoledet, the parturient mother, or that is the woman who gives birth, all things connected to tzarat, then the laws of purification of the person afflicted, and then the one who has any kind of bodily emissions. So we have 10 groups of Torot that, at least according to this guy, Jacob Milgram, who took it from Rabbi David Zvi Hoffman, a scholar from the 19th century, they found that this is how it's organized. And Jacob Milgram has the idea that these were basically separate sets of rules and separate procedures that were held in the temple that were basically temple Judaism in antiquity. Okay. Um, Now, we're just going to take a look at, we're going to literally dip into one of them. Okay. And that will get us to our theme here. Um, and it is, this is the Metzora. Okay. I'll just read a passage here and there. And here we go. Share the screen. This is from chapter 14. This is, I'm going to just zip through this here. God spoke to Moses, saying, this is to the instruction with the one who has tzarat, a scale disease. The scale, psoriasis, eczema, or flaky skin disease, at the time of his being purified. He is to be brought before the priest. The priest is to go outside the camp to look here, the affliction of tzarat. He's examined him. The priest is to command that they take one to be for the one to be pure, two birds. Then they sacrifice the bird over an earthen vessel with living water, live bird. He's to take it, cedar wood, scarlet worm, and hyssop, dip them and the live bird in blood of the slaughtered bird above the living water. Okay, I'm just going to stop there and say, okay, so there's this kind of sacrificial rite. They take two birds, and one bird gets slaughtered over an earthenware vessel holding running water. The second bird gets put into the uh, blood water mixture and then flies off. Okay, so this is a way that the bird takes away the impurity outside the camp. I think that's what's going on. And it struck me that if you're a bird and you are covered in a kind of bloodish mixture, you're going to be a good source of food for a wild bird, for a larger predator. Uh, it's going into the wild and it's going to be consumed. And so the story here is an allegory of the impurity going off to the wild and getting consumed and then being cycled into the vastness of the wild. And that's what happens to impurity. I think that that's one interpretation. I'm sure there are many others. Susie, go ahead.
Yeah, I suspect that having been dipped in that, its ability to fly is also somewhat hampered, which would make it, easier
Easy
prey.
prey, easy prey. Probably, yeah. No, I mean, it's we are around. If you walk near water, you see birds. Birds don't have a problem going to water. Ducks, you could be right. Okay, Ruth, go ahead. And Marlene.
So the rules of kashrut, one siyag la Torah after another, based on not cooking a kid in its mother's milk because that's cruel. But there's nothing wrong with killing a bird and taking another bird of the same species and dipping it into the blood of its brother or sister. And like that is so gross. I mean, and it's not nice.
A point made. I mean, uh, we're not going to haul in the whole priestly establishment to defend it here. What we probably have is that these are there's. It sounds like these things come from outside of Judaism or outside of the biblical culture. They get inside biblical culture, and they get biblicized or whatever the anachronistic term is. They become part of the religious way of doing things. And yes, we have. I mean, that would be one of the things that we could critique. I'm going to hold Nanette for a second, and then Marlene. Marlene, go ahead first, then Nanette. Go ahead.
It was interesting the transference of the tzara'at onto the bird without the guy really touching it and putting it on hit. There's no the guy who's sick doesn't have anything to do with the birds except that he brings them
He
or
brings them,
someone.
and so yeah, they're. This is all in the context of this person who wants to get back to the community, and in a different mode of teaching, I would say, I mean, I really enjoy this strategy, which is what's the story here? The story is a person who is for lack of a better word, he's been in quarantine because he has a disease that is communicable, but also seen as a disease that is a result of some kind of divine sentence. We'll set aside the theology of, does disease serve as a punishment, or is it a punishment? I mean, it's not a theology that any of us could live with, today. But in antiquity, people saw these things as signs from God. The emotional and moral, spiritual part of it is, here's a person who's outside the community for whatever reason, and we have all sorts of modern analogs to stigma. We can certainly, take a catalog even from people, in this class to see what constitutes a stigma for people in terms of being outside the community, and what would be required to get back into the community. We'll leave
Rabbi,
that. Yeah.
the house has to be burned down when you can't heal.
I,
I mean, is that
I,
the same disease?
no, it's not the same disease, but it's in the same kind of, whatever the nomenclature is. It's genus and species. So we have Tzara'at, scale disease, as a species of disease, and within the same genus of diseases that require, purification, you have this thing affecting houses. And so both have remedial rituals that obviously are very discordant with a modern sensibility. Go ahead, Nanette. Sorry.
Hey, Rabbi, this is what I'm a little confused about. I mean, we have to look at like you always say, we have to look at the literature, and this is what it says. But we also have to we have to know that back then, in biblical times that they're describing, people were very, very superstitious. If Moses said that God said, that's it. And I would think they would welcome killing the birds, welcome the sacrifice, because if you thought about how they would think that it's a sign from God, then the sacrifices would be correct.
Well, we don't have to go back to antiquity to see superstition. People have all sorts of superstition today, and live with all sorts of ideas that relate to trying to explain the unexplainable. The horoscopes are still very popular. Psychics are still very popular today, and I think both of them reflect a certain kind of the acknowledgement that there are certain things that we don't understand in the world, and we would all love people to tell us what would happen tomorrow. I mean, we're living in a moment. I mean, just think about it. We're living in the moment of a pause, a ceasefire in a war where it's not really a ceasefire, or it may be a ceasefire, and everybody says nobody knows what's going to happen. Okay, wouldn't you like to be someone in the know who knows what's going to happen? Let's say, wouldn't you like to be the person that is around 3 days from now or a week from now and knows how all this turns out, and then deliver that news to us? I mean, we have, entire libraries built on that theme of going back to the future, or projecting and going, because this, human beings don't know the future, and so they want to control the future in two ways. We've talked about this in the past. One way is through religion, and another way is through politics, and I'm not going to go there. Bonnie and Sheldon, welcome. You have your hand up.
So Mike, a question is there anything in the historical writings or whatever that shows that the Egyptians or the people who came before them did any of these things with the bird?
Yes, they did, not that with a bird, but I'm where I'm going with this is that there is some historical literature on bathing, and thank you for that, because I'm going to just shift the gears right now to do some of that text. I'm just going to highlight where we get to the part where he sprinkles the purified of 7 times. The one being purified is to scrub his garments, shave his head, after him into the. This is the big part. Verachatz b'mayim b'taher, and wash in water. He's going to shave his head and wash in water. Okay, and washing is an important theme in the entire set of laws relating to the tzarat and to all of these rituals. Washing functions in this passage. I'm just going to put you up one of the tools that I use to study these things from a perspective of, just what the text looks like here. This is the Ala Torah. This is the word virachatz. So it occurs twice in this chapter. This is alatorah.org. This is the tab on this website called Ma'abadat HaTanakh, the Tanakh laboratory. In Hebrew, it says this word, rachatz, highlighted here, it appears twice in this keta, in this paragraph, and it appears twice as many times its frequency is twice as many as it is in the whole rest of the Tanakh. Here are all the times that it occurs and the different times that it's mentioned. So we have a lot of washing going on, 18 times in the book of Vayikra altogether, all right, which tells us that the washing is a big part of the purification. Kind of makes sense because, tied to the whole idea of moving from one state to another is the elimination of the thing that makes you, impure, and the agent for that, the most basic agent for taking you from one state to another state is water. Water does that. I mean, the simple act of washing our hands. Hygiene, the way we know it today, obviously was not known in antiquity, but people knew that if you got mud on your hands or any other kind of thing that made your hands dirty, it probably wasn't a good thing to, let's say, eat with it, or if you wanted to. I mean, it just is so intuitive to know that you don't want to be dirty, okay? And dirty is associated with all sorts of things, including purity and impurity. And accessibility to holy areas, and how it is configured within the whole system of all the areas that have to do with the body and intimacy and sexuality. I mean, we try as much as we can to avoid using the language of cleanliness and dirtiness with regard to the body, and just understand that there are a lot of different levels to this. One of the obvious is that in the course of a human being's existence, you have to bathe. Well, that is most of us. Okay, Susie, go ahead.
Yeah, so they teach you in Chemistry 101 that water is the universal solvent. Now,
Yeah,
this doesn't apply in organic chemistry labs where
right.
I remember I worked once. Like I had a summer job, and we had, instead of water in our wash bottles, we had, I think it was ethanol or methanol or something. But still that's what they tell you.
Okay, so on that note, I want to turn to some scholarly literature about how we do our washing today, and this is the mikvah. Okay, biblical purification. Was it immersion? Here is Dr. Chaya Katz, who is an archaeologist and historian based in the Galil, and she's examined the archeological record of mikvaot and has a very startling discovery for us. This is a modern mikvah. I'm going to show you some more of that a little later. I'm going to just move to a better version. This is on the Torah.com, which is a great website of these things. So I'm just going to stop and move to another window here where it is a little better. Okay, here we go. And share the screen. Boom. A little larger print so you can watch with me. Leviticus 14:15 deals with tuma and tahara. Tahara can refer to a variety of procedures through which purity is restored. Purification from defilement by a corpse, we don't even get to that, but that's in the book of Numbers. Sprinkling of waters of purification, purification following childbirth or leprosy, which is what we are talking about here, entails sacrifice. All sorts of other defilements, such as caused by contact with the bedding of a person of bodily discharges, requires a day to pass, even though the biblical legislature prescribed different forms of cleansing for different sorts of defilement. Most share the common denominator, rachatz, washing with water as part of the purification process. The biblical term rachatz, everyday washing, we have proof text for this. Ritual washing, biblical law prescribes ritual washing in the final stage of the purification process. In other words, you go through the sacrifice, you get the blood on your ear or fur, and then you get washed. But nowhere does it specify how the required washing is to be carried out. Was it by immersing the body at one time in an installation constructed specifically for the purpose of purification, in the manner known to us from the mikvot of the Second Temple, or in a natural water source such as a pool or a spring? Interesting question. No, how did they do this? Did they, the basic question is, did they have mikvahs in the time of the Bible? Or a secondary question is, what did they do to purify themselves, and how did they do this? The regularity within daily life of defilement associated with menstruation or emission of semen requires us to assume that washing for purification was not a marginal concern in the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. On the contrary, it must have been a routine necessity of daily life. We must therefore re-examine the ways in which the ancient Israelites and Judahites may have carried out purification, taking account of geomorphological data and archaeological findings. In other words, where do you find ponds, cisterns, and springs? That's geomorphological. And archaeological. Where do you find the constructions of things based around water sources? Such an analysis can then serve as a basis for an attempt to reconstruct the way in which purification was actually carried out. Do you like the way I basically just glossed over menstruation and other bodily emissions? Okay. The water supply available to the residents of the kingdom of Israel and Judah for both everyday and occultic use had three principal sources. This is so important. Springs, okay? This is the land of Israel. Springs, wells, waterworks, excavated to reach groundwater, cisterns and reservoirs built to collect surface runoff or rainfall from overflowing streams. Archeological and hydrological studies conducted have shown that water resources varied from place to place. The mountainous areas are rich in springs, but other areas such as the Shephelah and the Beersheba Valley had very few. So it's so interesting the way the geology, I guess it's geology or geomorphology or geography, affects the culture in water, in the way that we relate to water. The basic contrast between the land of Israel and the land of Egypt, for example, as articulated in the book of Deuteronomy, is that the land of Israel where you are going is not like the land of Egypt. The land of Egypt, you just stick your foot in the ground and you get water because the water table is so high because of the Nile River. The Nile is what inundates and gives water and life to Egyptians. In the land of Israel, you don't stick your foot in the soil to get water. You either have to collect water from springs, live near springs, or you have to dig a well, or you have to collect the water from runoff. And we've all seen examples of this. We've done any kind of historical archaeology in Israel. On any one of our tours, we have seen a pool, a cistern, an aqueduct, Herod, all of these things. Masada, the whole story of Masada is based on how do you sustain this basically fortress and palace in the desert. And the amazing engineering of Masada was that Herod had all of the water brought to large cisterns in Masada that could sustain a large community there for quite some time. That's part of the story of Israel that on many go-throughs, we kind of know this already. So the water supply of the Shephelah came primarily from wells dug down into groundwater and cisterns and collected surface runoff. The area's high water table could be reached by digging wells to a depth of some 20 meters. The reality of supplying water by digging wells that reach under groundwater is evident on the account of Isaac's servants. So what she's trying to say here is that you have examples of all of these different kinds of water sources sprinkled throughout the Bible. During the course of the First Temple period, water systems were built into many cities to provide in-town access to water. The water systems that have been found in the various sites primarily include reservoirs meant to store runoff waters. Examples include the reservoir of Beit Shemesh, the pool of Givon. Other water systems include excavated tunnels. The Siloam Tunnel, many of us have walked through that, in Jerusalem, brought water from the Gihon spring to the storage pools. It's an amazing sight to see, and in days when we could do this a little more freely, we would take tours that went through the Gihon spring and the tunnel under in an area, the old city, and see how the water was connected from a source to a reservoir. The identification in surveys and digs of public water systems, wells, and cisterns allows us to posit that if there had been any sort of installations allowing for the immersion of the entire body in the First Temple period, such installations would be evident in archaeological findings. In light of the lack of installations intended for immersion, we can assume that the water source used for washing depended on the hydrology of the region. Where springs were readily available, washing was accomplished by immersing in a spring or by pouring water on the body. Since springs were available and they had the option to choose or in a spring or by pouring water on the body, in other areas, however, washing consisted of water being poured on the body from a vessel that did not include immersion. So I'm going to just stop there and just summarize this and say we don't have any archaeological evidence of mikvahs, that is to say, large pools of water in the First Temple period. First Temple period being from 1200 BC, 1000 BCE to about 586 BCE. In those 4 centuries between the time when Solomon constructs the temple and that First Temple is destroyed, there's no evidence of mikvahs that we know of, from a later time. But people have to wash, and 2, people have to purify themselves. How do they do that? Well, they either go to living waters, which is springs, streams, or they go to places where they can get water from a well, or places where they can get water from runoff. And they will, if you're going to bathe in a spring, you go and you bathe in a spring, but you're not immersing yourself necessarily, although some springs have attached pools. If you're going to a well, you're going to get a jug of water and you're going to pour it over yourself, right? You're going to take a shower, basically, which brings us to will bring us soon to one famous case of a woman who is bathing. All right, but we'll get to that in a second. You know what I'm talking about. In all of the cases, defilement purification is accomplished by washing water without any requirement that it be running water. It is reasonable to assume that the form taken by ritual washing for the purpose of purifying the body was directly derived from the forms of washing that were possible in the various regions of Jordan. That's, that makes sense. The only source that refers to the process of purification as it was actually carried out is the account of Bathsheba's purification in the book of Samuel, chapter 11 to 4, that's 2 Samuel. And here, of course, David sees, cue the Leonard Cohen song. David sees Bathsheba washing herself on the roof. It was the time of her purification. Vihi mitkashdeshet mitumata. According to this account, which seems in no way tendentious, washing for the purpose of purification was done within the confines of the residential structure. It clearly was not done by immersion in a natural water source, such as a spring or stream. She was on the roof of her house. She wasn't at a spring. She wasn't at a cistern. She must have had some kind of little tub on the top of her roof, and she must have had a jug, a large basin, and she probably, was pouring water over herself, okay? Since we know that bathtubs were not used for washing within Judean residents, because there's no archaeological evidence of bathtubs, Bathsheba, sorry the pun, Bathsheba could not have purified herself by immersing her entire body in a bath-like installation that allowed the entire body to be in the water at one time. Only one other possibility remains, and that is washing by pouring water on the body from a vessel. The sort of washing that could take place anywhere in the house, including on the roof. Purification by pouring water on the limbs of the body appears in various ritual ceremonies in the ancient Near East. In Egypt, Bani, every temple included a room designated for purification. The room was built outside. This is not, slaughtering birds, but they have a purification with water. It's part of the sacred area. Scenes of purification ceremonies show the person being purified, usually the king, flanked on both sides by 2 gods pouring water on his head. This is known as Bit Rimki, the house of bathing. It was widespread in Mesopotamia, in Gudea, the late 3rd millennium ruler of Lagash, until the Neo-Babylonian period, pouring water over the body. Okay, so we get water, the purification of the leper. I'm going to fast forward here. Then here she says as follows. Whence mikvaot? The existence of rules governing purification in all Eastern cultures makes it likely that the biblical rules on these issues depict the practices that actually existed in Israelite society during the time of the first temple. According to the biblical rule, the purification rite was completed by washing in water, but nowhere is the precise nature of the necessary washing specified. The absence of installations meant for ritual washing, along with the limited availability of springs and cisterns within the border of the kingdom of Judea, requires to assume that while immersion in springs was a possible mode of purification, in most instances ritual washing during the time of the first temple appears to have been accomplished by pouring water from a vessel over a body. That purification could take place within confines of private residence, as in the case of Bathsheba. Only from the period of the Second Temple onwards, the earliest mikvah we find date from the 2nd century BCE, do we witness a change in the manner of ritual washing, such that purification comes to require immersion of the entire body, all at once in running water. The change is expressed in the Second Temple period in archeological findings that include dozens of immersion baths. These changes find written expression in Mishnaic texts to be carried out in Mishneh Mikvaot. It seems fair to infer that this process should be linked to the full range of changes that took place in Jewish society during the Second Temple period. We see that during that time a series of cultural changes grounded in even increasing strictness regarding the laws of purity and impurity. That increasing stringency manifested itself in many areas of life, including an insistence on full bodily immersion as the exclusive means for achieving purification. In addition, during the Roman period, washing in a bathhouse became the most common form of washing, and that was the case in Jewish society as well. It is reasonable to assume, this is the punchline, that in combination these factors could have led to a change in how ritual washing was carried out and to the requirement of full body immersion. First, bathhouses became popular during the Roman period. Until then, baths are rare in this area, as opposed to Mesopotamian and Messenian world. Second, the requirement to be strict in purity and purity matters became an issue only during the Second Temple period. Although each factor originated distinctly, the confluence of both may explain the origin of mikvot and their importance of ubiquity in late Temple times. So I'm going to just close it and say as follows. What's going on here? Basically, bottom line. No mikvahs in the First Temple period, that is from 1000 to roughly 586 BCE. No mikvahs 586, 400, 300, 200 in the high ones BCE. You start getting mikvahs. Why? So she's saying this is, it's not going to surprise us here, but it might surprise people on the, down the block. What is going on here is that you have the collision of the Greco-Roman world coming into the land of Israel. And the Romans, they are bath culture. They love their baths. And they bring the bath house as an institution to the Middle East, to the land of Israel. And they start constructing bath houses. Now, in the effort to differentiate the culture of idolatrous Rome and Greece from monotheistic Judea and Jews, you need to find the boundary line between these two cultures. Bathing is the body. We all love the body. And we could see how bathing culture can draw us in. The rabbis have lots of stories about the bathhouse, right? Who doesn't love a good schwitz? Who doesn't love a good bath, right? It's pleasure. It's the physical pleasure. And not only is it enjoyable from the perspective of the body, but there are, certain things can creep up into a bathhouse, like a little statue, like a worship of a god and this and that. When you are all together in a bathhouse, lots of things can happen, including lots of things that I guess still happen in bathhouses. Okay, in terms of what kinds of sexual practices or sexuality takes place in a bathtub. Now, I'm not saying that at what point the rabbis are going to say, well, we have distinctive food rights, okay? These come from the Bible, and we have sources in the Bible for how to purify ourselves. Why not let's extend it? It used to be that you could purify yourself by taking a jug and pouring it over your head. But now, let's make the insistence that you do a full immersion, and we create another kind of institution called the mikvah, in which you can immerse yourself bodily. And she says there are two vectors here. One is the bathhouse, and the second, which we cannot underestimate, is the prevalence of the idea of pure and impure as a mindset within that culture. These are ideas that are going to become so pronounced and magnified in that world that you need all sorts of mechanisms for that. It's very interesting. We do not. I'm talking about in non-Orthodox Jewish culture, that sensibility of the holy and profane, pure, impure, that doesn't carry over, but it still exists very, very strongly in the Orthodox world. Go ahead, Marlene.
The bathhouse was communal and the mikvah is personal.
Indeed. Well, some mikvahs are personal. Today they are mostly personal. You can go to a mikvah where lots of people are coming together and immersing together at the same time. We associate today, and I'll talk about that. We don't have a lot of time, but I'm going to get to some things about that. The mikvah has become an institution of privacy, intimacy, mostly feminine intimacy. We kind of don't know of the male world, the masculine world of the mikveh, which is it's a big world. Go to Jerusalem on a Friday afternoon. If you know where these places are, you'll see lots and lots of men coming out, and it's a very exciting experience for a lot of people. In Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox circles, this is a big deal to go to the mikveh. Go to the mikveh Friday and go to the mikveh even Shabbos morning. You can go to the mikveh on Shabbos morning, and nobody thinks twice about it. Okay, let me for the sake of time, we're going to move on. I want to move. There's another article on this. I just want to highlight it, but unfortunately, we're not going to go through it here. A similar vein, when and why washing became immersion, between traditional, rabbinic, and scientific critical approaches to the origin of immersion in the mikveh. So there's a lot of study on this, and we have the traditional rabbinic understanding of what a mikveh or what, and then of course what he's citing is historically we don't see these things until well into the Second Temple period, and how the words that are used, taval and rachatz, and how they appear in different texts. And his bottom line is, from a purely practical perspective, the full body immersion is no simple affair. The ordinary washing can be performed virtually anywhere and requires nothing more than a jug or small utensil capable of holding the requisite amount of water. Immersion necessitates a large amount of water held in a space large enough for an entire human being, about 200 gallons of water. In a land with few water resources, as is the southern Levant, access to natural bodies of water large enough to permit full-body immersion would have been limited. The solution to this problem came with the introduction of the mikveh, the stepped pool. By dating the first appearance of this type of installation in the archeological record, we may learn when immersion supplanted the earlier biblical norm of washing. So here is Qumran, the Judean desert, and this is an ancient mikveh. Qumran is about the 1st century BCE, and this is Judean desert territory. You can see the steps, and this is a pool. And the Chasmonian period has so we have a lot to do this, and here's a person who's sitting in a hip bath, as a way of showing bathing. Okay, And then he goes into a whole discussion of, how this can affect the way we look at this thing, and basically he arrives at the conclusion, look, Judaism, evolves, and the halakha evolved to make this a kind of feature of Jewish life, to the extent that it is still a bit of a mystery, certainly in non-Orthodox circles, what a mikvah is. And I will just share with you, Oprah. Oprah visited a mikveh. This is when Oprah had her show. This is a while ago. Here we go. Can you all hear? Can you hear?
During a Hasidic woman's menstrual cycle, and for 7 days after, she and her husband are not allowed to touch at all. At the end of the 2 weeks, she's required to immerse in a mikvah, a ritual bath where she is spiritually cleansed. Only then can she and her husband touch again. Discreetly built and only open once the sun is set, you wouldn't even know if you passed one on the street. The mikvah is considered to be one of the most important parts of Jewish life. Without it, there is no sex and therefore no future generations. Jewish law dictates that if a community does not have a mikvah, they are required to sell anything they can, even their cherished religious scrolls, to raise the money to build one.
Hi, Fran.
I was given rare access to see this hidden and sacred ritual bath for myself.
Hi, I'm
Free.
Oprah.
I'm Branya Schaefer. I'm very pleased to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome to a mikvah.
This is the mikvah that I
This
heard
is-
so much about.
This is one of the many thousands of mikvahs all over the world.
Really? And
This
it's
one
so
I call
hidden,
it-
nobody would even know it was here.
Well, it's very discreet. We're very discreet
As it
about
should
it,
be.
and
And I understand a woman has to come here after sundown,
generally after sundown.
generally after sundown. Generally after sundown.
Generally, there are
And so-
always exceptions to every rule.
All right.
But this is the waiting room.
So you wait here.
This particular mikvah has 2 rooms for preparation. This is a preparation room. Before immersing in a mikvah, a woman has to bathe.
So she bathes first.
She bathes first, showers, washes herself. Going to the mikvah means that she divests herself of everything that's on her. Clothing comes off
Just
first.
listen to this language,
Jewelry,
okay? That's very important.
makeup,
Divest.
and she's completely clean. And after that, she comes here. And this is the mikvah.
So it looks to me like kind of a spa or a whirlpool. So what makes it different?
What makes it different, it's built to specific technical specifications. It has to have at least 200 gallons of water. It has to be connected
And is the water
to-
cold or warm?
This is regular city tap water. Chlorinate it, turn on the taps, get it as warm as is comfortable. The mikvah water here is connected, this pool is connected to another basin that catches rainwater. Because a mikvah has to be natural water. So
see.
any ocean, river, not a stagnant pond. Central Park Lake is not a kosher mikvah, but the Atlantic Ocean is, and the Hudson River is.
So, I see.
So I can't have my bathtub as a mikvah.
I see.
And a barrel of water.
Because it's not going to be meeting a natural body
It's
of
not
water.
exactly.
So
Bathsheba,
does she
though,
soak herself or just immerse herself?
No, a split second of immersion,
And then she's out again.
and then she's out. And there's a prayer that's said. She says a blessing, and it's an incredibly spiritual moment.
That's lovely.
It's the moment of mikvah itself. It's the immersion, and it's truly a sense of feeling face to face with God, feeling the connection from history and across all social boundaries. Women who connect in this way in a very spiritual level.
That's beautiful.
Okay, so I'm just going to stop there. This it's so interesting. That's an American mikveh. It's a Brooklyn mikveh. Lots of wood paneling. It's beautiful. It's got whatever you would find in that mikveh, and I have examples of other mikvahs that I'm going to show you in a minute. What's so interesting is that now the mikveh, shouldn't make any reference to the Bible, certainly nothing to these parshas. It's Jewish, of course it's Jewish. It's rooted in Judaism. It's rooted in the Bible. It's been enshrined in halakha for 2,000 years. but you could probably go through the history of the mikvah and show that the mikvah was, went from being to a certain extent a hole with steps down. You probably didn't want to go in there because it was so brackish. All right, and now we have these beautiful, and they're literally like spas. And partly the reason for that, I think, has to do with a reawakening in Judaism in general. I think this is where feminism is channeled in Orthodoxy to create unique spaces for women, to make this ritual, which has so many overtones to it, as beautiful and accessible and as spiritual as possible. Okay, so within the context of, within a historical perspective, you can see that the mikveh emerges from contact with the Greco-Roman world, the ancient mikveh. The modern mikveh emerges from contact with the modern world, with feminism, with pride in oneself, with a sense of differentiation, and also very much to create luxury, to create the sense of luxury. There's there was a documentary on the mikveh. I think we showed it several years ago, where in Israel, the Israeli women described the experience of going to the mikveh, and the American women going. So we had an Israeli woman coming to experience the mikveh in the United States, and she says, in Israel, I feel like a tea bag. I go in, I dunk in the mikveh. It's an awful experience. I put on a towel, get out of there. Okay, it's like she puts me in a glass of tea, and then I'm out. In America, you meet, you chat, you sit with all the women. Everybody waits their turn. You luxuriate. You spend an hour, 2 hours schmoozing. You take your bath, and then you go into the mikveh. It's a wonderful spiritual experience. You're in this beautiful setting. You can't wait to. You don't want to leave. Basically, it's the mikveh has become a kind of a spa, which is ironic, because the origin of the mikveh is, again, the origin was a kind of, because of the contact with a spa. The ancient Roman bathhouse was a spa, and so they had to differentiate from that. But now we've come basically back for full circle. That's exaggerating, but go ahead, Susie.
Yeah, I think part of the impetus for making these spa-like mikvaot was to rejuvenate the practice, because people aren't going to go if they're feeling like a tea bag in a cup of water, but right. They're more likely to go. You can convince somebody. It's easier to convince somebody if you show this really nice place.
I want to just bring up another. This is Rochelle Frankel. You might remember her. She's a mother of one of the kids, young kids who was killed by Palestinian terrorists. She happens to be a yoetzet halacha.
See how things work here, make you comfortable. Every mikveh is a little bit different, but the basics are the same. Over the last few years, people around the world are trying to make mikvahs more welcoming, more like a spa-like experience, aesthetic, clean, and this is what you'll see in most mikvahs that you might go to. Here we have a small waiting area. It might happen that you'd come to a mikveh and the rooms are busy and you'd spend a few minutes sitting here. Here you might meet another lady or two, but later on when you're preparing and going into the mikveh, everything is extremely private and the whole place is structured to protect your privacy. The water in modern mikvehs is warm, it's treated, and it's filtered, so it's extremely clean. And if you have special medical conditions, you can consult your doctor, your rabbi, and your mikveh attendant. Special arrangements could be made. We have two kinds of rooms. There are rooms with a shower for women who started their preparation at home and want to finish up the preparations here before their immersion. And there are other rooms with a bathtub where you could spend the whole time of preparation here. Say you didn't have the conditions to do that at home, or you're coming straight from work. You can come here and, with the peace of mind you need, spend your time preparing for the immersion. The purpose of the preparation is to make sure there are no barriers between you and the water. We use warm water and soap and spend some time cleaning ourselves. Once you feel that you've done a good job, don't second guess yourself. If there are things that you're having a difficult time removing or questions that come up, you can ask the mikveh attendant, or you can even call the hotline from within the mikveh. Depending on how much preparation you have left, you might need some supplies. You can bring them with you or check with your mikveh if they have it. If you forgot anything, don't hesitate to ask. Most mikvahs have most of the supplies you'll need for preparation. Your basic responsibility is to check with your eyes to make sure there are no barriers on your body that will come between you and the water. It's also a good opportunity to take a minute to take care of your health. It's a good time to have a breast self-examination, to check your skin for any molds, and just take good care of yourself. Once you feel you're ready, you would find the buzzer in the room. Some rooms have an intercom system. Most rooms have a buzzer, and that lets the mikveh attendant know which woman in which room is ready to come out. She would come over from a different door and very privately knock on your door and help you towards the mikveh.
I'm going to stop here, okay, because it goes into the different things. There are two things that are really important about this video. One is, look, there's all these details, and each detail obviously reveals a certain kind of story, and look how Judaism has evolved, in terms of the role of, there's no kohen, there's nothing. If anything, the mikveh attendant and this woman who is an expert in this area of Jewish law is being consulted, which is really quite a fascinating and quite a modern development. That makes this almost revolutionary in Judaism. I wanted to say, this is not your Bubby's mikveh, right? And certainly the one that I'm going to show you right now is not. This is the other thing about her was that she's an extraordinary personality because of the experience that she went through with her son as a murdered victim of terror. But I want to just go give you another example of in the world, in the Jewish world, we have all sorts of flavors and varieties. And in Boston, there is a modern egalitarian mikveh. This was spearheaded by Anita Diamond, the writer.
Sanctuary with Rabbi Esther, and I'm going to give you the quickest of mikveh tours today.
So
I had an opportunity to go to an egalitarian, inclusive mikveh, and I'm going to show you around the bathroom that you can see here.
Okay, I want to show you that mikveh is for everybody. That's a hoist. Okay, if you're disabled, a woman who is disabled in some way, you can get lifted by that kind of thing, and
as well as
this is the mikveh.
And here you will see, zooming in, the neshika, the kissing, quote unquote, between the natural waters and the tap water.
I just want to explain that the big pool is all city water, tap water, but where the hole is, there's a cistern, there's a where natural water, rain runoff is collected, and it has to be of a certain size, and that water interacts with the water in the pool to make it a kosher mikveh. That's what makes a mikveh a mikveh. You just can't go to a swimming pool and immerse yourself because the swimming pool is just circulating, tap water. But what makes a mikveh is that it's contact with water that has not been drawn and not been accessed in any way that can be conducted by elements that would conduct impurities.
Which renders the mikveh kosher. back to the bathroom, you have this wide selection of readings from Maim Chaim in Boston. This mikveh was somewhere else.
I just want to let me just see.
Laminated.
So you have all sorts of different times for a mikveh. It's for a bride, for a groom, mother of a bride, father of a bride, father of a groom, etc. For challenging life transitions toward healing. So following abuse, abortion, following upon completion of mourning. They even have
for easy use with all kinds of different themes.
40th birthday, 50th, gender transition milestone mikveh. Okay, that's,
sacred intentions and inspirational texts that people can use on their immersion. It was just a very thoughtful and personal gesture that made the mikveh appropriate to far more than its traditionally halachically prescribed uses. As you can see here, there are even kavanot for ordination into Jewish clergy, for marriage, for divorce, for healing, for celebrations, for birthdays, etc. Of course, the traditional uses like Nida, the laws of menstrual purity, and conversion, and holidays, festivals, Shabbat and Yom Kippur are also detailed here. Just take a look at these beautiful kavanots. You can make the mikveh experience really personal to your needs. It is an excellent time for personal prayer and reflection and marking whatever life's journey and transition you're on.
All right, I'm going to stop there because what we have here is this extraordinary trajectory. I can't get over it. You have the Bible in which you have basically a jug and a washcloth. I don't know. You don't even have a cloth. You have a jug of water. You're pouring it over your head. You're washing with the limited means available to you. You then have the Second Temple period, which is the mikvah, which originates because of the contact with the Roman bathhouse and the need to differentiate from that. And then you have this period in medieval Judea. I don't have archeological examples of medieval mikvaot and pre-modern mikvaot, which were not particularly attractive places. And then you have this explosion, from the 70s on to making the mikveh into an attractive space for women, basically. And then I put this mikveh, the Boston mikveh, in that trajectory because what you have there is the kind of identification that, we need rituals to symbolize transitions from one state to another state. Now, the original state was impurity to purity, but we certainly have the mikveh as the traditional way to symbolize conversion. You go into the mikveh and you come out of the mikveh, and you are, if you are not Jewish before the mikveh, after you go into the mikveh, you're Jewish, right? A male needs circumcision and then the mikveh. But the mikveh is the way you become Jewish. So that becomes a kind of paradigm for transitions. Judaism lacks a symbolic ritual vocabulary for things like, what do you do when you are recovering from abuse? What do you do when you recover from a disease? What do you do when you want to claim a new stage in your life? The mikveh is restricted in terms of, holidays and sexuality, but it should not. After all, why not? Why not say, to someone who feels a profound sense of defilement in their life, either their house was burgled, or they lost something, or they experienced a tremendous depression or whatever, or recovery. Why not symbolize that with a trip to the mikveh? There's no reason not to. So here they're saying, and the evolution here is to the individual, that the mikveh had been communal, and then private in terms of the culture of women, and now it's private in terms of the culture of the individual. I would not necessarily want to be at the mikvah with a group of people if I was going to be commemorating something private in terms of the transition in my own life. I would not want to share that with people. And so the mikvah becomes a place where you're making contact with something very physical, tangible. It's very spiritual. There's what to say, there's a blessing, etc. You're immersed, and what could be more spiritual than the sense of immersion and then kind of stepping forth as a new person. You are literally bathed, and you literally become a new person. So the roots of that, the sources of all of this, is in our parshas this week. This was a little excursion into the world. We never really did that, and it's a great topic of conversation as to what kinds of ideas shaped modern Judaism, and that the mikveh itself is a defining line or a dividing line between orthodoxy and non-orthodoxy. To a certain extent, maybe less so now, but whereas the large majority of modern Orthodox, and certainly the vast majority of Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox, observe rituals relating to the mikveh, the vast majority of non-Orthodox do not. And Rabbi Neil Gilman used to say that in the non-Orthodox world, the boundary for Judaism is the bedroom. In the Orthodox world, Judaism includes the bedroom. That's the line, and that's probably where to go in the conversation, because where Judaism touches on the most intimate parts of your lives, and Vayikra has no problem with it, but in modernity, it's not so simple. Any questions, comments? We'll leave it there for now. Just want to remind everyone that tonight is Yom HaShoah, 6:45. We have our service. I'll try and make it online, make it meaningful for people. So we can encourage people to come and to be there Yom HaShoah tonight, and we'll have our class tomorrow, also 10:30 in person if you're able to. Okay, so that's it. Thank you so much, and